Hi guys, it's Annette, and this video is extremely sporadic. I wasn't going to make a video this week, especially a political video, but I've been seeing a lot of verbiage and vocabulary used incorrectly online recently, and I need to set the record straight. I'll explain more at the end what I mean, how people are using like phrases wrong and stuff like that. But what I first want to say is, I think it's safe to say when it comes to politics, most of us line up in the middle. We're some shade of purple. We're either a bluish purple or a reddish purple. Everyone has different beliefs and values and morals. You can be pro-choice and be Republican. You can be a Christian and be a Democrat. I think it's safe to say that most people aren't far left and most people aren't far right. They line up somewhere in the middle. I think a lot of people were taught or think online that far left means communist and far right means fascist. Well, unfortunately, that's not really correct. So I'm going to show a quick video that's going to explain it a lot better than I can.
The difference between these two is essential. Many have been led to believe that the political spectrum places groups such as communists on the far left, fascists or dictators on the far right, and political moderates or centrists in the middle. However, a more accurate political spectrum will show government having zero power on the far right to having 100% power on the far left.
The word democracy is not written into the Constitution at one time. It's not in the Bill of Rights. It's not in the Declaration of Independence.
Nor does it appear in any of the constitutions of the 50 states. At the extreme right, there is no government. The extreme left features any form of total government. Those who claim that Nazis and fascists are right-wing never define their terms. Toward the middle of the political spectrum can be found the type of government limited to its proper role of protecting the rights of the people. That's where the Constitution of the United States is. Those who advocate such a form of government are really constitutional moderates.
Founding fathers hated the idea of a democracy. In a democracy, 51% of the people control 49% of the people. America was founded as a constitutional republic. 99% of the people can't take away the rights of 1%. You have your rights because you were born with them. You have God-given human rights. No matter who they are, I can't take away your rights.
So let's analyze the basic forms of government. They are monarchy or dictatorship ruled by one, oligarchy ruled by a few, democracy ruled by a majority, republic ruled by law, and anarchy, which is ruled by no one. Looking first at monarchy or dictatorship, this form of government doesn't really exist in the practical sense. It's always a group that puts one of its members up front. A king has his council of nobles or earls, and every dictator has his bureaucrats or the men behind the scenes. Oligarchy, which is ruled by a group, is the most common form of government today. Most of the nations of the world are ruled by a powerful few. At the other end, we find anarchy, which means without government. Some people have looked over history and found that many of its worst crimes were committed by governments. In a state of anarchy, everyone must be armed, and movement is severely restricted because one's property has to be protected at all times. There are some who advocate anarchy, however, not because they want no government. It's a quick transition from something that exists to something desired by the power-hungry. These calculating anarchists work to break down the existing government, rioting, killing, looting, and terrorism. Tragically, the people living in such chaos often go to those best able to put an end to it and beg them to take over and restore order. And who is best able to put an end to the chaos? The very people who started it. The anarchists who created the problem then create a government run by them, an oligarchy, where they have total power. Civilized people have always hired someone to do the guarding, a sheriff, a police force, or some branch of government. Once law enforcement was in place, the people were freer. They could leave their property, work in the fields, and so on. In short, the proper amount of government makes everyone freer. The word democracy comes from two Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratein, meaning to rule.
They make us believe that we're a democracy and that majority rules.
This, of course, sounds good, but suppose the majority decides to take away one's home, or business, or children. The flaw in democracy is that the majority isn't restrained.
Hitler was elected. Hitler did everything legally.
If more than half the people can be persuaded to want something in a democracy, they rule. What about republic? Res, meaning thing, and publica meaning public. It means the public thing, the law.
Wasn't it Benjamin Franklin, to paraphrase, that said, democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner?
Exactly.
A true republic is one where the government is limited by law, leaving the people alone.
And then he also said, in a republic, the sheep would have a gun to protect himself.
America's founders had a clean slate to write on. In fact, there were some who wanted George Washington to be their king. But the founding fathers knew history, and they chose to give us the rule of law in a republic, not the rule of a majority in a democracy. There was a man named Solon who urged creation of a fixed body of law not subject to majority whims. Based on what they knew of Solon's laws, they created the 12 tables of the Roman law and in effect built a republic that limited government power and left the people alone. Since government was limited, the people were free to produce, with the understanding that they could keep the fruits of their labor. In time, Rome became wealthy and the envy of the world. In the midst of plenty, however, the Roman people forgot what freedom entailed, the proper limitation of government. Once the Romans dropped their guard, power-seeking politicians began to exceed the powers granted them in the Roman Constitution. Some learned that they could elect politicians who would use government power to take property from some and give it to others. Agriculture subsidies were introduced, followed by housing and welfare programs. Inevitably, taxes rose and controls over the private sector were imposed. Soon, a number of Rome's producers could no longer make ends meet. Productivity declined, shortages developed, and mobs began roaming the streets demanding bread and circuses from the government. Many were induced to trade freedom for security. Eventually, the whole system came crashing down. They went from a republic to a democracy and ended up with an oligarchy under a progression of the Caesars. Knowing this, we as Americans are ultimately left with only two choices. We can keep our republic, or we will inevitably end up with an oligarchy, a tyranny of the elite.
I don't care what the majority wants. I live my life as I choose. And if I don't commit violence, theft, or fraud against another human being, I can live my life as I wish. We're put on this earth to become the best individuals we can be, to fulfill our God-given potential. Right? We're not here to put on this earth so the government can tell us how to live our lives. No. The same thing in health. You know, if you're sick, you have to have a certain protocol. Nonsense. You know, be individuals. Think for yourself.
Basically, none of us want a far left world or a far right world. We want something more in the middle. But let's just discuss if they did happen. What's the difference between a far left world and a far right world? Let's say America was far left and we were a communist country. Well, okay, let's say there's this man who started working in construction when he was really small, and he started working into construction, saving all his money until he made his own construction business. And then once he had his construction business, he helped out his community, like fix up like the library and the school and all this like free charity work, like the fire department. He helps out. Let's say there's another guy that he's probably like in his 30s. He lives with his grandmother. He's not working because he currently has 3 baby mamas, but he doesn't see the babies and he doesn't pay, you know, any child support. So he doesn't want to get a job because he doesn't want his, you know, wages to be garnished. Well, in a communist country, these both people are going to get the same amount of wages, the same amount of benefits, the same amount of insurance. And the insurance, if it's universal insurance, it's not going to be the best insurance. The government doesn't want to pay for the best. They're going to give you the bare minimum and it's going to be really crappy. So you have to be really healthy and just get like regular sick. You can't get, you know, something like really crazy because you're not going to get like the help. I don't think it's fair to have the same kind of lifestyle as someone that doesn't work as hard or is not even that good of a person, because the guy that lives with his grandma is also stealing money out of her wallet. In a communist country, government has total control and you'll own nothing, you'll be happy about it, and that's no way to live. We'll all live in these tiny ass apartments, like 400 square feet, and it doesn't matter if you work hard and the person next to you is lazy, we all get the same thing. So, some of my footage got deleted, so I have to re-say everything. And yes, my freezer has a lock on it because my cat opens it when he wants to be an asshole. So we were talking about the far left side of the political spectrum, and it's going to be like a lot like that Black Mirror episode where like each and every person is like on a rating system, like with their social media, and you can't do anything bad or say anything negative about your government or anything like that, or you won't be able to travel, and they'll put different restrictions on you, and they'll take away some privileges. It's a really scary place to be if you live in a country that has 100% control, if the government has that much control. There are some communist countries where the citizens can't even have guns or any kind of weapons because they don't want to take over the government because they're so unhappy. Like there are some countries where they can't even drink alcohol because they don't want them to have glass bottles to use as weapons towards the government because they're that, like they don't want to be there. That's how controlled they are. In a far left world, you're going to have a lot of different stuff like socialism. We're going to have communism. We're going to have Nazism. We're going to have fascism. We're going to have capitalism. All the isms are under government, under the state. Like they only can happen under government. I'm going to insert another video that goes over all the isms.
Isms. What's socialism? You have 2 cows. The state takes 1 cow and gives it to your neighbor. Your neighbor loses the cow and wants another one. What's communism? You have 2 cows. The state takes both cows and gives you some milk for your work instead of a paycheck. What's fascism? You have 2 cows. The state takes both cows and makes you buy the milk. What's Nazism? You have 2 cows. The state takes both cows and puts you in a prison camp until you like the idea of buying the milk. Statism? You have 2 cows. The state takes both, milks one, shoots the other, stores the milk goes bad, and they throw the milk away. What about traditional capitalism? You have 2 cows. You sell one and buy a bull. Your herd multiplies and the economy grows. You sell both and retire on the income.
Now let's talk about a far right world. A far right world is going to be the complete opposite. The complete opposite is zero government. And this is crazy. This is kind of like the Wild Wild West or like The Walking Dead or Mad Max. Yes, it kind of sounds good in theory. I would love to like grow my own food, be able to collect rainwater, build my own house, have my own farm animals, make my own clothes, make my own furniture, do everything for myself. And if it was a perfect world, but we don't live in a perfect world. It would be so awesome if everyone can just respect thy neighbor, but it won't be like that. It would be just like the Wild Wild West. People are going to want to steal your crops, steal your animals for food. And if someone like tries to take your animals or your crops or tries to do something to your children, you can't just call the cops. You can't be like, hey, 911. There's no government. And when there's no government, men like to try to take power because they want someone to be in charge. And when men try to take power, then it comes with a cost of women and children. They usually like to grape and unalive women and children. So it's a very scary world I wouldn't want to live in. It would be like living in the purge every day. And that would be so scary. Nobody wants to live in a far left world, and no one wants to live in a far right world. Me, personally, I would love a little bit less government. I would love to be able to collect rainwater and not have it be illegal if I want to water my plants with it, because they have to regulate everything and make money. There are still some states that it's illegal to have marijuana. I went to every single Pride up until they finally legalized same-sex marriage. I thought it was crazy that the state or government can tell you who to love. But in the same breath, I want some government. God forbid anything happened to where I live and there was a fire. I need to call 911 and get the fire department over here, or the police department. Or if something bad happened, I want to be able to call the lifeline and be like, hello, help me. Most of the time, Democrats and liberals, lean more left, and then Republicans and libertarians lean more right. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is I was on TikTok and I was in a political TikTok live, and I was just listening. I wasn't like doing any talking or anything. And there was this young man, and he was on the left, and he was talking a lot about fascism. And someone asked him, what's the opposite of fascism? And he didn't have an answer. He kept just trying to make stuff up, and then me, along with a lot of people in the comments, kept writing anarchy. Well, he read the comments, and then in the same breath he said, well, I consider myself an anarchist.
Every time I thought I had everything to say in the video, I wash off all my makeup because I don't like having it on. I remember what I'm going to say, and I forgot to say the moral of my story. If you're an anarchist, you would lean right. And I'm wearing a filter because I just took I'll show you. You asked for it. You got it.
Okay, we're going to get it right this time. The left, which is probably your right, my left, but the left is government, fascism, and the right is going to be no government, anarchy. And once you learn about politics, you won't, get so tripped up when you're trying to have conversations. So I think it's important. We all kind of want the same goal. We just have different mindsets on how we're going to get there. But yeah. I hope you guys liked this one. Give it a thumbs up if you did. If you have any more commentary or anything you want to bring to the discussion, please enter it down below. Subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, 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 bye.